To this now, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, hosted the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Rwanda, Olivier J.P. Nduhungirehe, in Pretoria. Now, this meeting, was part of ongoing efforts to rebuild and strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. And the South Africa, of course, and Rwanda have announced that President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Paul Kagame will soon engage in bilateral talks, and the two ministers announcing that Rwanda will lift a ban on South African agricultural products. Meanwhile, South Africa has agreed to hand over visas for ordinary Rwandans. Now, this process will, however, take time, as Home Affairs will still have to ensure compliance. So let's get more details now on this significant development, as ABC News specialist correspondent Sophie Mokoena is joining us. So, Sophie, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Quite a historical moment when we consider that the relations between these two countries have been frosty. Are we seeing a normalization of relations?
Well, you are correct, Bonyiwe. We see a normalization of the relations, but we know that this process started in 2024. You'd recall that the country Rwanda at that time in Kigali, they were commemorating 30 years since the genocide was meted against the Tutsis in Rwanda. And therefore, President Ramaphosa traveled to Rwanda to be part of those commemorations. And a day before the commemoration, the president of South Africa and the president of Rwanda met to discuss the tension between South Africa and Rwanda. I must say, President Ramaphosa inherited this frosty relationship. It didn't start during his tenure. And therefore, I think you'd recall I had a conversation with President Kagame 2 days before they met with President Ramaphosa. And in that interview, an hour interview, President Ramaphosa was able to get a sense of what happened and what needs to be done. And therefore, when they met the next day, they were able to focus on what needs to be done to strengthen the relations and address issues that were impediments. And therefore, they then agreed that the two ministers, Foreign Affairs of Rwanda, International Relations of South Africa, must meet and now rekindled the relations. And that process started. But you'd recall that war in the DRC, in the eastern part of the DRC, caused a strain. You would recall when President Ramaphosa and President Kagame, that standoff, the message on social media by President Kagame after he took offense of the statement that was issued, and there were some words that he was not happy with in characterizing the Rwandan forces. And since then, we've known about this tension. Little did we know that behind the scenes, Minister Ronald Lamola and his counterpart were working very hard to rebuild the relations, but understanding and having been privileged of engaging the people who are involved in the Great Lakes problem. I know that after that incident where South African soldiers were killed and then later brought back to South Africa, the DRC took a decision to invite America, and therefore also it didn't sit well with Pretoria also. And therefore you see a shift now, and I can say that it looks like this has been successful. When you look at the body language, when you look at how they explained the relations.
And you speak about, these two countries and the work that has been going on behind the scenes, and who can even forget some of what you've said, those social media utterances. A lot of us were watching that. So how important is it that these particular relations normalize?
Well, clearly it is paying dividend already. You know that South Africa is under pressure from other countries as it relates to the current challenges of illegal migration and immigration. And Rwanda today defended South Africa, saying that African countries cannot isolate South Africa because of this problem, because all African countries and countries around the world, they do have migration and immigration problem. Let's take a listen at what Rwanda had to say about the challenge Pretoria is facing as it relates to migration, a very powerful support for South Africa.
The debate we should be having, it's a debate about, a general debate about migration. We don't believe that we should finger pointing any country. It's important that we talk about the migration issue, the root causes of migration, we should talk about that, and then how to address the migration, which in our view should be safe, should be legal, should be orderly. This is what we need to do. And then we're also discussing about one of the flagship project of the African Union, which is a free movement of people on the continent. All those issues are thematic issues for the continent, for the integration of the continent. And we believe that for us, ministers or officials of AU member states, we should not react with passion or based on what we see on social media. We should address real issues and provide a solution. This is what we should be doing. So for Rwanda, we believe that it's important to have a debate, but not really having a passionate debate based on pointing finger on a single country.
So I fully agree with my dear brother here in his response. We have been very clear that any debate that can take place in relation to this matter at the African Union should focus on the broader discussion on the migration issue. Almost 45% of the African continent, particularly the youth, goes outside their own countries of origin. So we have to discuss that because it's clear it's not just one country, it's an African challenge.
All right, quite interesting there to hear from both these ministers, that is the Minister Ronald Lamola as well as his counterpart from Rwanda, Olivier J.P. Nduhungirehe, speaking about the issues around migration. And it's something that, would have come out from government for quite some time to say, if you take this to the AU, let it be a broader conversation. Let it not just be a conversation about South Africa alone. So interesting to see then the ongoing efforts to rebuild and strengthen these particular bilaterals, and also, of course, we'll continue then to monitor the developments here, as you say, that this has been ongoing and now is leading us to that moment when the two presidents then are expected to come together. So thank you so much for that update. Appreciate it. That's SABC News Specialist Correspondent there, Sof Mugwen.